This podcast does not provide medical nor legal advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello, possums, and welcome to Everyone Dies, the podcast where we talk about serious illness, dying, death, and bereavement. I'm Marianne Matzo, a nurse practitioner, and I use my experience from working as a nurse for 45 years to help answer your questions about what happens at the end of life.
And I'm Charlie Navarrete, an actor in New York City. And we're both here to remind you that the more you know, the better prepared you'll be in case of an emergency.
So please relax and get yourself something to eat and drink. And thank you for spending the next hour with Charlie and me. And happy Pride 2023 as we offer a contribution to Pride Month as we talk about healthcare considerations for the LGBTQ plus community. In the first half, Charlie has information about compassionate care and the recipe of the week. In the second half, I'll talk about inclusive care consideration and advanced care planning for the LGBTQ plus population. And in our third half, Charlie has a reading by Rachel Priestley titled, My Child Just Came Out. Now what? So, how are you, Charlie?
Smoky. And this, at this moment in the Northeast, we were talking earlier. I mean, it's all the way down to Florida, isn't it? Or with all the smoke.
Oh my God!
I'm not sure if it's hitting Florida, but if not, it's pretty damn close. Yeah, all the smoke from the fires up in Canada. This is nuts.
Can you, because you smell it, or is it like choking your throat? I smell
it a little bit. I smell. You definitely see it because a few days ago I kept thinking, why is it so cloudy? No, it wasn't cloud. It's from the smoke. And once in a while, I mean, the wind will kick up and. Yeah, it's a very light scent of it. So I'm sure up north, New Hampshire and Maine, the smell's got to be worse.
Oh, no. Charlie, we did a show a few weeks ago about fall cleaning, getting rid of stuff and, not leaving a mess for our kids. And I got this box in the mail last week, and it was full of books. And there was a note on top that said, these are all of the Jack Reacher books from the beginning of time up until COVID. And I thought to myself, I didn't mean for people to mail their stuff to other people. When I said, clean up your stuff and you don't need to keep books to donate them. And so in case the audience can't tell, Charlie sent this moving box full of books. It's like, what the hell is this? I open it up and it's like literally every Jack Reacher book. Universe. So was that timing coincidental to the show, or did you say, "Oh, I got to clean out my books. I'm going to put them in a box and mail them to Marianne"?
It was that. It was the latter. We both talked about cleaning things up and what to keep and everything. And I thought I never throw books away. And I thought, wait a minute, you two kids like Reacher, so there we are. So I just packed them up and sent them out.
So I just wanted to clear to the audience that was not my intent.
How about a P.O. box? You got a P.O. box, sweetie? We'll just send this out your way. Yeah. Yeah, and even places like Goodwill and where you can drop off clothing and things like that. A lot of places don't want books, or
really?
If it's a couple of books, it's okay. But if you have a small library, no.
Well, another place though, if you got books, do not send them to me. I'm just letting the audience know. At the VA hospital, take them there. They're always, when I worked there, the guys were always looking for books that they would want to read. You know, they don't want
Yeah.
any of that foo-foo love story stuff usually.
Oh, see, that's the rest of my collection, the foo-foo love stories. So, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, especially if you've got guy kind of books, VA hospital or a VA nursing home, places like that would really love that kind of thing. But no, I do love Jack Reacher books, and now so it's still sitting in my living room as I walk by it every day, saying, I need to go through that and
I'm gonna
put
trip
it
over this box. I'm going to kill him. Yeah.
Well, I regularly say I'm going to kill Charlie, so that wouldn't be new.
True.
But
That's nothing new.
but I have to put them in order because now I need to read them in order since there's every one all the way up to COVID, and then figure out which of those I've already read. Which I can guarantee you that somewhere in the middle of a book, I'll say, I think I read this before, but I don't know how it ends, and so I end up reading the whole thing again because I don't remember how it ends. So, do you have a recipe for this week?
Yes, I do. So, folks, who doesn't love Rice Krispie treats? All that gooey sweetness along with a bunch of crunch. Traditional Rice Krispie treats are always a great dessert choice. But rainbow Rice Krispie treats are even more fun. They are basically the same treats, but made with individual layers and formed into a rainbow shape. You can even make puffy clouds on the platter with cotton candy. Add some snap, crackle, and pop to your next funeral lunch with this week's recipe.
I think that sounds good.
It does sound good. Moving on. Michelle O'Rourke wrote a blog about compassionate caregiving, which is very applicable to this week's topic. Care is a word that is frequently used, yet often taken for granted. We can ask someone, "What do you want in your coffee?" And they may reply with, "Milk or cream, I don't care." In the world of healthcare, we tend to use this word as something task-oriented. I am here to give you foot care. The word care finds its roots in the Latin word cara, which means lament, to grieve, to experience sorrow, to cry out with. This understanding expresses an invitation to enter into someone else's pain before doing something about it. We usually feel more comfortable providing a service or using our knowledge to bring about a change or a cure rather than meeting others in their pain and then journeying together towards their healing and wholeness. It is easy to look at caring as an attitude of the strong towards the weak or the powerful towards the powerless. Let me take care of you. I have some area of expertise to offer what you need. In palliative care, we try to break through the functional kind of response to suffering by offering more comprehensive and holistic care. This includes asking difficult questions when needed and offering deep listening and presence to the patient, their family, and loved ones. We use the term total pain to remind us that there is more to managing pain than addressing the physical manifestation alone. It is important to determine emotional, psychological, and spiritual elements and support those we care for in all those areas. Dr. Harvey Max Chokanoff, a palliative care physician and psychiatrist from Winnipeg, Manitoba, extensively researched the field of patient dignity. In his work around dignity-conserving care, he encourages us to begin our encounter with the patient dignity question, PDQ, which is, what do I need to know about you as a person to give you the best care possible? In this way, a caregiver is less likely to assume that they know what someone needs or what is important to them. Care providers will always approach a patient or a situation with their own inherent beliefs and biases. This is a natural human position. We often look at a situation with empathy, trying to understand the other person's suffering and how we might want to be treated if we were in their situation. Again, this tends to be a natural response, one born of compassion towards the other. In many cases, our position follows what we might know as the golden rule, which is, do for others as you would want done for you. In healthcare, this might mean considering if we were the patient, how would we want to be treated? Or what if this was my spouse or child? How would I want them to be treated? Dr. Chakanoff suggests we might offer better patient-centered care if we apply the platinum rule instead of the golden rule. The platinum rule states, do for your patients as they would want done for themselves. This means looking beyond our own biases and assumptions, getting to know our patients as people and discovering what is important to them. Given their culture, experiences, beliefs, and values, they may make very different choices around their care than we might choose for ourselves. This approach requires a caregiver to develop self-awareness so that they might become aware of their own assumptions and biases and whether their responses contain any judgment. We are all encouraged to take time to reflect on our care encounters and ask ourselves if we are truly providing care that is determined by the needs and values of the patient and not our own. So, please go to our webpage for the recipe of this week, the Rice Krispie treats, and additional resources for this program. Your tax-deductible donations are always welcome so that we can continue to offer you quality programming. Thank you in advance for making your donation at www.everyonedies.org. That's every, the number one, dies.org. Marianne?
Thank you, Charlie. Today we're launching our series about inclusive care for people with serious illness, those who are dying, and those experiencing grief. Our healthcare system, and I would also say our society, needs to be on the pathway from special care, that is saying we have a program for a particular section of society, to inclusive care of all people. Being inclusive is not about treating everyone the same. All people are not the same. We can develop self-awareness and change the way that we assess, interact with, and support people and their families. This means using the correct language for the group. That's like, for example, the correct gender, or that Native Americans will wear regalia at a powwow and not like a costume or some other word. That we have educational materials that include language and pictures that are not all white people, having staff that are not all white people, equitable benefits for same-gender relationships and transgender employees, providing inclusive training to employees and volunteers, and just in our own heads, think inclusively as opposed to a them and us kind of approach. Another aspect of inclusive care is awareness of our own attitudes, beliefs, and emotions. Be aware if you're blaming people for their diseases. I spent a lot of time, Charlie, about 15 years ago, teaching in Russia, and particularly in St. Petersburg, and at the AIDS Hospital #1. And I was there teaching about palliative care, but the infectious disease doctors that I was talking to were quite clear that the men who were in that AIDS hospital were there because it was their own fault, and that symptoms weren't managed, and you didn't get a sense of a lot of empathy toward the situations that patients were in, because what they would say is, well, they brought this on themselves. They had, men having sex with men, and that's why they're in this situation, without any kind of sense of the suffering that the patient themselves was experiencing. So we're going to start this series with the LGBTQIA plus community. So LGBTQIA plus is an abbreviation for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer or questioning, intersex, asexual, and more. These terms are used to describe a person's sexual orientation, meaning who they have sex with, or gender identity in terms of how they identify. So for the rest of this chat, I'm going to shorten the acronym to LGBT for ease of discussion. But know that when I say LGBT, I mean LGBTQIA+. Now, we've produced many programs about advanced care planning, and Charlie mentions it at least once in every show because he's on a mission. But many people in, my experience when I was working come in waiving their power of attorney after a loved one has died and think that this document is still effective after birth. And think that this document is still effective after death. But it's not. The power of attorney expires after death because it's meant to make decisions for a person while they are alive. It's not a magic piece of paper that follows to decisions after death. And this is really important for you to realize as you make your advanced care planning. If you want the same person who had your power of attorney to continue to handle your affairs after you die, you will need to specify that they serve as the executor or personal representative of your will or trustee of your trust. If you're concerned about maintaining continuity or making sure a particular person oversees your affairs upon your death, be sure that you speak with an estate planning attorney. Every person's situations and needs are different, and state laws also vary. A professional in your area can help you understand your local laws and tailor an estate plan that meets your needs. Now, for LGBT folks, the biological family, the people who are legally the next in line to make decisions, are oftentimes the last people that you may want to make your decisions. So you need legal paperwork allowing your most closely held individuals who aren't necessarily married to you or related by blood to be in the hospital and at the funeral home with you and on your behalf. So let me tell you a story that I was involved with that I think highlights this pretty well. A friend of mine came home one day and found his partner on the floor. And he was kind of foaming at the mouth. And my friend looked at him and his first thought was, why are you laying on the floor doing a face mask? Like, it didn't even occur to him that there was something wrong. And then he realized, oh, he's not on the floor doing a face mask. He's like not breathing and foaming at the mouth. So calls 911. The partner gets admitted to the hospital, to the ICU, put on a ventilator. And what turned out was that his partner had a major brain bleed and just didn't even have any brain activity anymore. Well, come to find out that these partners who lived together and shared their life together, their families didn't know that they were gay and that they were partners. They thought that they were roommates. So they had never done any of the legal work to say, here's who can make decisions. Here's who can release me from the ventilator. Here's how it goes. So not only was my friend in a situation where his partner was brain dead and on a ventilator, but he was in a situation where he had to tell both families that they weren't roommates and that they were partners and lovers, which was very difficult. Now, his mother was, we'll go with appalled and not supportive at all. His partner's mother was not appalled, but was more in a place of, oh my God, my son is brain dead and on a ventilator. Now, instead of my friend being able to make decisions for his partner, it was up to the mother. The mother got to decide what was going to happen if it was going to happen, if he was going to be released from the ventilator, and when that would occur. And she was in no way interested in releasing him from the ventilator. And my friend called me and he said, I need you to come talk to her because she's like not really wanting to listen to me. He said, I know he wouldn't want this. I know he wouldn't want to stay on this ventilator, especially when they could see that there was no brain activity. So I go to the ICU and I say to my friend, go do something for a little while. Just kind of don't be around for an hour. Let me talk to her. So up on the board, in ICUs, they'll have like the person's name and what they like so that the ICU nurses can know about people. And, if you can't tell you for yourself, they have the family like right. And I looked up at the board and with the mom and I said, if he was going to write on that board the answer to those questions, what do you think those answers would be? So we talked about each of the questions, like what he liked to eat, what he liked to do. And so we go through all of that. And I said, so in this situation, what do you think he would want? And she said, I'm only thinking as a mother right now. I don't want to lose him. I don't want him to die. And I said, he's not there anymore. He's not him anymore. And, you saw the brain scans. There's nothing there anymore. And she kind of listened and she nodded, and I just spent some quiet time with her. And I left, and a little while later, I got a call from my friend, and he said, we're releasing him from the ventilator at 5:30. Can you come back? And I said, sure. So I came back for the release from the ventilator, and they were all there when he died. And then my friend said, well, I want to dress him. And he had these like silk pajamas, and his partner really liked different colognes. So he had brought his like favorite cologne. And he said, will you help me, clean him and dress him? And I said, sure. And then I looked at the silk pajamas and I said, you really want to put silk pajamas on him? And he said, oh yes, he'd love these. He'd love these pajamas. And I'm like, holy crap. So we do a bath and we start to dress him. And he's like, it obviously had never dressed a dead body before. And he's like, oh my God. He was like, just like so surprised by how heavy his partner was. And I said, yeah, this is what dead weight is. And we just started laughing because it was an impossible situation to get these silk pajamas on him. And so once he had him, looking the way he wanted to look, mom came back in, and I left, left them to say goodbye. And I thought to myself, how did these two adults get into this situation where family didn't know their real life? They had done no advanced care planning. It was fortunate that for my friend that the house was in his name, because if that house wasn't in his name, that would go to the family. Now, what his friend had in terms of money and savings and everything else, by law, goes to the parents and, goes to the spouse first, which there was no legal spouse. It goes to biological children. There wasn't any. And then it goes to parents. And my friend was really upset because his partner's father got half the money. And his partner had no relationship with the father, and that's just putting it nicely. And so he was really upset that, this man got half of his partner's things. But And I'm sure for people listening in the LGBT community, you have tons of your own stories where these kinds of things happen. But let it be, and let our podcast for the rest of you be kind of a cautionary warning that you really need to do the paperwork, or, and putting it off and saying, oh yeah, we'll do it later. We'll do it next year. We'll do it whenever. Let me tell you, you have no idea what's coming. So just do it and protect yourselves and protect your assets. If there's no biological family and you don't have the correct paperwork, you're not even going to be allowed to claim the body or the cremains if you're not a blood relative. Besides claiming and burying the body becoming into question, is if the blood relative is going to use your right name and right pronoun. There are stories of family burying Bob as a man when she had transitioned and taken the name of Sue. And so, the family's sort of last act is, he is born Bob, and we're going to dress him like Bob, and we're going to put Bob on the tombstone with no respect for the life that Sue had. Most often, gender determination is made by the doctor signing the death certificate, but gender markers from medical records can be unreliable, since transgender people who still need prostate exams or pap smears are considered gender-specific care, and they may retain their birth gender even if they change their gender on a driver's license. I had, when I was doing some research, I had a hospice nurse tell me a story of a husband and wife. There were kids, and the husband got, it must have been ovarian cancer, and he didn't want to tell the kids because 20 some years ago, he identified as a man and was, although not legally married, but married to the woman, his wife, and the mother of their children. And the kids never knew that Dad's assigned gender at birth was as a woman until Dad got ovarian cancer. And so you think, well, we're never going to have to tell the kids. Yeah, you're going to have to. Something is going to happen that will kind of out you. And so better to have the truth out with people and make plans to protect your truth. So even if someone has prearranged their own funeral, their next of kin can legally override those plans. Your estranged mother from Wisconsin can blow in 30 years since you've last seen her, order a Catholic service with rites, and exclude your chosen family from the ceremony. So is there anything you can do to ensure your wishes are carried out? Well, fortunately, there are. There's something called a funeral and disposition of remains directive. So be sure that you fill this out. It's called the funeral and disposition of remains directive. And I have all of these references in the show notes. You can find everything that I'm talking about in there. Funeral directives detail a person's wishes regarding their funeral, including services like depositions and memorial, like, do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? Whatever, and what kind of memorial you want. Decisions also include whether you'd like to be, like I said, buried or cremated, and where your remains will reside, how the funeral will be funded, or how you'd like your funeral to be conducted. This directive, once notarized, identifies who will make decisions about physical remains and funeral ceremonies. It's an essential step, both legally and emotionally, to maintain autonomy over your body and empower who you want to carry out your wishes. So there's an example of this form in the show notes, and you can Google the one for your particular state. Regarding the money or other things in your state, if you don't make a will, what you have will be transferred to your next of kin in the percentages determined by the state that you live in. So let's say you share your house with your partner if you're not married, and it's in your partner's name and they die. Even if you live in the house is not legally yours, and your partner's family can force you to move out, sell it, or do whatever they want with it. Unfortunately, according to the law, unmarried couples who have not created a trust or a will likely have extremely limited rights if one of them dies. That's why a solid estate plan is so important, because it can offer the legal protection that is needed in these situations. You can also fill out paperwork called the transfer on death, which allows you to name beneficiaries and the percent that they would get when you die. The assets, like brokerage accounts, stocks, bonds, other investment types, are released without going through probate to whomever you name when they present your death certificate. This is another way that you can ensure that whomever you want to inherit your money will get it after you die. All of what I'm telling you is detailed in the show notes with links to guides. You can also go to a estate planner and ask them to do all of this paperwork for you. For our third half, Charlie is reading a column written by Rachel Priestley titled, "My Child Just Came Out, Now What?" Rachel is a youth pastor and mother. Charlie?
They, them. It was dark, cold, and rainy that night. We were in the car. Me in front, them in the back. The chill ran through me, part nerves and part the weather. I took a deep breath. Someone at church mentioned that your friend was using they, them pronouns for you. Is that what you prefer? Softly from the back seat. Yes. Was this about gender identity? Do you want to talk about it? No, and no. Well, I just wanted you to know that I love you no matter what. And you can be honest with me when you are ready to talk more. You're safe with me. I know. We drove the rest of the way home with only the sound of the rain softly hitting the windshield, both overwhelmed with new realities. Them knowing that I know. Me sitting in the knowing, desperately wanting to say the right things and convey my unconditional love. But in coming weeks, I stumbled. I fell flat. I wasn't always loving. I wondered if it was peer pressure. I felt guilty in my wondering. I felt and said the wrong things. I hurt my child. But through many months of talking, tears, coming face to face with fear of rejection, and countless hours of counseling, my child finally felt completely safe. It took 9 months, but they finally came out as trans. They, them. So your child just came out. Now what? Love them. Now I could stop the article here. Love them. But sometimes we need a bit of a roadmap of what love looks like in this moment. Maybe it can save your child some of the pain our family faced. What does love look like in this moment? First, thank them. Your child came out to you. And what this really means is that you have been invited into their most sacred trust. They are looking to you for love and grace. So start with, thank you for trusting me. No matter what, I love you. You are safe with me. We are in this together. Second, tell them directly that their truth does not change your love for them. Your love is whole and unconditional. Say it again, and again, and again. Third, ask them if they feel safe answering questions at this time. There may be things about your child's gender that you do not understand. It's okay to ask your child questions, but only if they are in a place to answer them. Be kind in your asking and make sure your questions aren't accusatory or inflammatory. It's okay to learn. It's good to be curious. It's not okay to ask hurtful or invasive questions. It's a delicate balance. Fourth, soak up resources, what it means to identify as LGBTQIA. Read, and read. There are excellent books and articles available. Make yourself a student. It's okay to ask your child or queer friends and family members questions, but it's imperative that you gain knowledge outside of that relationship. Find resources that are balanced and champion your child and your family. Fifth, seek wise and objective counsel. This could be a friend, family member, pastor, or counselor. It's an incredibly sacred space to open up about. Ask your child's permission before sharing their truth. It is very important that your support system and your child's be people who champion your family and guard your truth. This is a journey, and each family member will have different beliefs around the issue. Each family member will need to learn and grow. It's okay not to understand. But everyone in your circle must be respectful and gracious. Everyone will grow at different pace, and that's okay. Sixth, become a student of state and federal laws being passed about the LGBTQIA community and their rights. Our children have such high levels of stress and are inundated by stories circulating on social media about the treatment of their peers. They face immeasurable stress, so learn about what they are reading and seeing on social media. Learn about what laws are affecting them. Seventh, know that grief is a normal part of this process. You may be letting go of certain societal norms, weddings, children, etc., that your child will not be participating in. You may be letting go of a birth name that is deeply meaningful to you. It's okay to question or grieve, but these emotions are often best shared with your confidant and not your child. We have to weigh any burden sharing might add to their journey. Eighth, be willing to fight for your child. Speak up on their behalf when they aren't in the room. Speak for their mental and spiritual health. The road won't be easy, but knowing you are fighting for them will transform them in countless positive ways. It may even save their life. Friends, know that your child is loved. Full stop. No caveats, just loved. There are people who will support your journey and theirs. You may have to find new friends and relationships that will support and champion your family. You may have to release unhealthy relationships. That's okay. There is a place for you, and there are people for you that will support you through this journey. Take it one step at a time, starting with some of the steps outlined here. Reach out if you need help or are hurting. You won't be perfect on this journey. I wasn't, and I'm not. Learn to fail forward. Learn to apologize along the way. Surround your child with grace and love, and find those capable of doing the same for you. Please stay tuned for the continuing saga of Everyone Dies, and thank you for listening. This is Charlie Navarrete. We close this episode with a short poem from poet Joyce Supton titled, My Father Dying. It was hard work, dying, harder than anything he'd ever done. Whatever brutal, bruising, back-breaking chore he'd forced himself to endure, it was nothing compared to this. And it took so long. When would the job be over? Who would call him home for supper? And it was hard for us, his children. All of our lives we'd heard my mother telling us to go out, help your father. But this was work we could not do. He was way out beyond us, in a field we could not reach.
And I'm Marian Matzo, and we'll see you next week. Remember, every day is a gift.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.